Hey guys, Curtis from Beyond Backtesting. Today we're going to talk about your daily loss limit, the importance of it, and more importantly, adhering to it. Today I increased my daily loss limit on the fly, and I exceeded my daily loss limit, right, by a significant amount. I'll continue to trade, but it was more I wanted to lose. This is not I don't mean for this to be a quote unquote loss porn video, so I'm not going to share how much it was. But I will share, my starting loss in the day is always $600, and then sometimes I'll raise that to 1,200, and I lost significantly more than that. And so I want to kind of go through the process of why that happened in the hopes to prevent it. Right now, I always recommend that if you can set your loss limit outside of your control at a broker or some other level of control, especially for a discretionary trader. I don't have the ability to do that with my broker. I use AMP. I think they're a great broker, and so I have it set in rhythmic. I do have my loss limit set in rhythmic at $600 to liquidate me. Okay, but I can change that, and so I changed it. And sometimes, one of the mistakes we'll go over is I've been changing to $1,200, 1,100, 1,200, or 1,000 at times, and I'll go over how that happened, that mistake happened, and try to see what I need to do this differently. Okay. So I started off the day up about $300. I made about a little bit overnight, and we was really anticipating we would move higher today. That's not neither here nor there because I take my signals, but that's kind of what I was anticipating. But I was able to quickly put up about 300, and I started to struggle. I could tell I was down. I was down like 200, and I was down 220. Maybe 220. But I could tell it was becoming difficult for me to trade. So that was the first hand. And I even thought maybe I should just shut this down because I thought it would be kind of a difficult day. But I didn't. So I think the first thing to understand is because I had to raise the loss limit, right, irrationally. So what happened was without sharing the amount I lost, I added more size than normal, okay? And then I realized I was going to get liquidated because I didn't raise my liquidation up enough, right? So I got liquidated, and then immediately I re-entered a trade with a much larger loss, limit, and the trade failed. Okay, and I had a valid signal, and I was really confident it would work. So we can see here I had I had exercise and correlated losses, and this is what really makes you lose fast when you're doing any type of active trading. I had these two things: the correlation and the exercise. But I think what's relevant without clear goals. I think when I go back to it, every step is rational. Every step of the way, I do think we're rational traders. So when I go back, and I think if we don't understand this, we can't correct these mistakes because they're rational mistakes, so to speak. There's not an irrationality component to it. Maybe there is, but I don't see that. And so that's why it's so hard to correct these mistakes, because if you're doing what's under uncertainty, if we're acting rationally, then we're going to repeat the same mistake. So what was the rationality? Okay, well, I was down 600, and I'm going to take the next trade's going to be a signal trade, right? And so it's we think it's got an edge, or the implication is it has an edge. And I haven't worked with these signals enough to know really, how well they work, but they're new, so that might have been an incorrect assumption. But the assumption is we're not dealing with a correlated situation, because I had waited the time and the price had moved. Even if the market was trending, would be less likely to impact this. So the first thing is, okay, the next trade is the rational reason you raise it. You say, okay, my next trade is independent, and non-correlated with the previous trade. And if that were the case, then that if we knew that would be the case, then it wouldn't matter. You should always just take the next trade. They're completely uncorrelated. But we don't know this. It's just an assumption, right? The market could be trending, so they could be correlated, right? That's one thing. And we're assuming it has an edge. We don't know. Maybe it's particular in my case. It's something I'm working on new, and obviously the market's much higher than where I got liquidated. But now. So this is the first mistake, Okay, so to speak, this is the rational assumption. And the other rational assumption is that our goal in trading is to maximize profits, right? This is the first thing. The goal is to maximize profits. And if your goal is just to maximize profits, and you have an edge, and your next trade is uncorrelated, then the daily loss limit will not serve you. Okay, it will not serve you if all these things are true. If each trade is independent and non-correlated, and each one has an edge, right? And they're on independent edge. Then there is no daily loss limit will just hurt your profits, right? However, this is not, for most traders, this is not the goal. This is the mistake. The first mistake is assuming our goal is to maximize profits to the maximum extent. And that was one of the first mistakes I made. I was up 300. I was starting to struggle. 300 is a good gain. I'm doing some new stuff. The 300 was fine. There was no reason to try to push when I started to struggle. So we're really, the goal is, as traders, is not to necessarily maximize profits. The goal is to, well, we can rephrase it. The goal is to maximize profits within certain boundaries. Boundaries being not losing more than a certain amount on a given day, right? So it's not, our goal isn't to maximize profits. Okay, this is pure rationality, right? So to speak, this is your pure rationality, but that's not our goal. And I've been seeing that some systems been advertised recently about their profits, and what I don't see by a certain vendor, and you don't see the daily loss. You don't see the max daily drawdown, right? You don't see that with the profits, and that's important for most people. Most people don't want to have a very large daily loss, because you start trading that system. And I've had this happen trading systems, right? You say, okay, historically this is the biggest loss. The first trade I put on was the biggest loss, right? And even though I had historical 10-year data, right? So we have to be mindful of that, right? And we don't. One of the first things I look at is what was your max daily. When I look at a trading system, I look and say what was the max daily loss limit. Even if the profits are very good, if the max daily loss limit is high, then that gives me trepidation to even want to trade that system. And that's the problem. If you see a lot of systems that have really good performance, is usually they have very high daily loss limits, right? Very high. They may not have much of a drawdown. Maybe their drawdown is 2,000, and their daily loss is almost 2,000, right? So that's the open trade drawdown. So the first thing we have to dispel is this notion is our goal is to maximize profits. That was the first mistake I made, was I was only concerned about the profit. Okay? I was only concerned about maximizing profits. But the other thing is that our goal is really to maximize profit within certain boundaries, right? To say, okay, I'll trade today and I won't lose more than $600 no matter what happens. Okay? No more than $600 we'll lose. I will lose. The other assumption is no mistakes will occur, right? So the other assumption is you won't make any mistakes, and mistakes happen. So for me to lose more than $1,200, I had to make an additional mistake beyond just raising the loss limit. And the mistake I made was I traded it larger than I should have. I traded extra because I was very confident that we would hold there. I traded even exercise. And again, the one thing that's nice about having that daily loss limit is you can go in there and trade with as much size as you want. Even if you make a mistake, you're not likely to lose much more in your daily loss limit unless you get too crazy and it can't liquidate you in time. But that's another security of having that daily loss limit. Say, oh yeah, you go trade with, if you want to try to see if you can trade with more contracts, see if you can trade more contracts. You won't lose more than $600, right? Whereas if you trade with a lot of contracts, you can lose a lot more if you don't adhere to your loss limit. So that's the other assumption. So we've got we got three wrong. First we got assumption that's unprovable here. This one's unprovable. Okay, we don't know that our next trade is independent, non-correlated with the previous trade on the same day. There could be something impacting both trades, right? Unless you've really done a lot of research, different markets, trending markets you have. So the first thing is this is unprovable assumption. The second thing is a non-true assumption, right? So the second thing is non-true assumption is that you'll make any mistakes, right? And so what we're looking at here, I used to think about this, is that there are different optimals, right? And I've seen traders, I've seen a trader once while I was tracking their system, and they blew out their account and right to the lows of the account. They'd done really well. And, and they said, they knew it would work out, but they just went and closed it because they didn't want to, it whatever. I don't know if it's paper trading or not. It could have been, but the thing was is they didn't know, right? It's uncertain. They suspected the trade would work out, but they, it would have worked out. I think that was the kind of thing it would have worked out, but they just closed it right to lows. But the thing is that we don't ever know. We're acting under conditions of uncertainty. So, in order to not raise your loss limit, we have to start with a different set of assumptions. First thing we have to value. We have to value not exceeding our risk limits more than obtaining maximal profit, because many times that will help you, right? We also have to recognize the cost of mistakes, right? If I had just raised the loss limit to $1,200 and hadn't made mistakes, that would have been probably not that big a deal. I would have probably lost more, but it wouldn't have been that much more. So we have to recognize the cost of mistakes, that once you start raising that loss limit, there's a potential for mistakes. You can't rely on it to safeguard you, right? So to speak, if you make a mistake. So that's a nice thing, is that, okay, you put on too many contracts, your loss limit still protects you, right? And you always know that loss limit's there, and you're not going to lose more than that. So we also have to, you have to change your goal, right? Change your goal from maximizing profit to, staying in the game, staying in the game, and trading in a way that's sustainable. Okay. We also set the loss limit. So we also have to recognize that if you set your loss limit to 600, like I do, right? And you say, okay, but I shouldn't have, but every trade is independent and then correlated. Well, I don't need more than 2 or 3 trades a day to hit my, whatever my profit objective, which is, $300 to $500. So if you need more than that, then you can say, well, you should just trade smaller. So there's no, why would you need to raise your loss limit? You could just take the trade smaller. So the first thing I think is to understand that what leads to it may not be rational. In some cases, it's not rational. If it's not rational in your case, and understand why it's not rational. But I think in most cases, when you raise the loss limit, it is rational. It is because I think people are mostly rational when it comes to stuff like this. And one way to think about it is there are global and local optimals, right? So a local optimal, let's say you have a system trade on with a certain edge and, or a certain expectancy, right? Wins a certain amount of time historically, and you have a certain risk limit on it, and so you want to make more money, so you just increase that what you put on that trade. Locally, evaluated without respect to your account. There's no real logical problem with that. The expectancy doesn't change just because you bet more, right, or just because you risk more. The problem is that you're not working in isolation, right? You're trying to achieve the statistical results of the system, which is going to be much higher, right? So if you have a 70% win ratio on a trade, that's 30% of the time that signal's going to lose. Where if you trade a system, you could trade that signal in such a way that you have a maybe a 90% chance of making money at the end of the year if you size it right. So I think the first thing is to understand, okay, determine if you're losing because it's irrational or rational, and regardless of why, what we have to do is change your goals. We have to change what we value, right? And understand that mistakes can happen. This is the thing: is that if you just, if you were just to raise your loss limit, say from 600 to 800, and you stay within that, what would that matter? It probably wouldn't. But the thing is that in the case of today, if you make multiple mistakes, then you're not just raising it from say 600 to 700 or 800 or to 1,000. You're raising it many multiples of times potentially, and so that's what gets you. That's really what gets you. So yes, if you could just grow from 600, 800. The other thing is that you very quickly with larger numbers. Okay, I started off with $0. I'm up 300. That's pretty big, right? That's a good gain. If this is the risk of large numbers. Okay. If I'm down 600, now I just make 300. I'm just to be down 300. Okay, so we start to see that these numbers start to take on a different magnitude. Okay, now we're talking about $1,000 now. Okay, let's say I'm down 1,000. Okay. Now to make it back halfway, I've got to make 500. Right. $500, if I hadn't lost, would be a great day. You know, when we think about it. Okay, starting off at zero. If you get bigger, right? Okay, we go to 2,000. Okay, now you know to have a 50% loss, you've got to make 1,000. And this is the problem: is that you get to 1,000, you get to $1,500. Okay, and we, you know, you can take 10,000, you get to 5,000. Okay, and we start to see that these numbers just get, you know, they completely change their nature, right? Okay, you get to 100,000. And you get to a 5% on that's only $5,000. So the thing is that the quality of the numbers changes and how you view them, right? So so this is the problem when you get the big numbers. So the way to avoid that is not to get done with those big numbers in the first place. You know, keep it small. So my mistake, you know, was first not recognizing that I could make a mistake, not fully recognizing the cost of mistakes, right? You know, a certain number of errors had to occur for this to happen. I had to trade bigger when I was losing. I had to keep trading after I started losing. I had to raise my loss limit, and then I had to misestimate my loss boundary, and then I had to place the trade again. So, but that's what can happen. And so, so yeah, I think this should help. Is that basically we have to go in and we have to change our values to say, okay, my goal isn't to make as much as possible. First, that's not the goal, right? Because if it is to maximize profits, and we have these considerations here, then it may be that just raise your loss limit, right? But we don't want to do that, right? We don't know these things. These things are true. We're going to assume they're true until we have evidence that they're not true. And getting to your loss limit is evidence that something went wrong. You either didn't size individual trades correctly. And this is I think that this is what will help is that you have control over how you size your trades, right? It used to be the case with the mini when you trade minis, right? But you have the control. You have the control. You can trade the micros, right? And I made most of my profits in the micros today, actually, because I've been trading smaller. I was uncertain. I was like, something bad's going to happen, and I was only up about 100 on minis. But you know, that's the thing is you say, okay, I need 4 trades a day, okay. And $600 is not enough, right? But that's the thing is that, okay, just size down to the micros. So that's the first thing to understand that, hey, whatever boundary, I could give you any boundary. You should be able to trade it as long as you can position size within that boundary. And something like $600 is enough, right? It's enough. So the first thing is that we take these things to be true, that, hey, each trade's uncorrelated and they have an edge until we have evidence. So one way to think about it is if you're at your loss limit, there's already evidence that you made a mistake, right? But it gives you freedom, too, to say, hey, I do think this trade is worth more than taking, you know, if I want to put everything on one trade, you can do that, right? And so that's the freedom it gives you, is you have freedom to operate within that, right? But you want to divide that up. So the thing is, the other thing we have to value is we have to value adhering to our risk limit more than coming back from a loss. And that's the key of it. We have to value adhering to our risk limit and learning to trade within boundaries. And sometimes we have to see a big loss to understand that can happen because, you know, if you raise it a little bit and you never get hit and, you know, you trade smaller and come back, then you may not see that possibility for that big loss, which is just a possibility, a real possibility when you increase that. So going forward, you know, I'm going to take these values. I'm going to say, okay, I value adhering to my risk limit more than recovering on the day. I assume that, so here we do our rational recoveries, to speak. Our rational, first is our values, right? I'm going to value adhering to my risk limit more than recovering on the day. Okay, I value longevity. I value staying in the game more than making as much as possible. Right. Okay, I recognize that mistakes can happen. Okay, and I have different colored. Speaking of mistakes, I have my rhythmic set with different colored backgrounds for the minis and the micros. And I have placed on, before I did that, 10, what I thought was 10 minis, it was 10 micros, right? This is why you need liquidation, because mistakes can happen. That wasn't anything I was doing that was undisciplined. It was just a mistake. I had the wrong instrument up, right? Um, this is why we need the loss limits, right? Because if you have your loss limit set at your, this is why you need an automatic loss limit in addition to being disciplined. Is, you know, if that happens, you're not going to lose a crazy amount. You're just going to lose a normal daily loss, and you can go home and say, okay, or you know, you basically say, okay, start next day fresh. Don't make that mistake again. So recognize mistakes can happen; they can be costly. Okay, I'm going to assume, right? I'm going to assume that I have a probability of making money until I have evidence that I don't. Hitting the daily loss limit is your evidence. Is our evidence that, hey, we don't have the advantage, right? Okay, I'm going to value here to my loss limit more than recover on the day, right? I'm valuing the game more than making as much as possible. I'm recognizing mistakes can happen that could be costly. And very importantly, I'm going to recognize that I can trade within that loss, within any reasonable loss limit, and it is my freedom. Okay, so that's my freedom, right? That's your freedom. That's your safeguard. And this is the one big thing. If you feel like it's imposed upon you, like I can't trade with this loss limit, set a bigger loss limit or trade smaller, right? So this is the first thing: is that, hey, you're doing something wrong to hit your loss limit. You need more trades, then you should have been trading smaller. So this is, I think, really what will help you is to recognize, hey, you know, I should have been trading smaller. I wouldn't have hit it today, right? So you know, maybe something you have to learn to trade within, right? Recognize that trade within loss. And another thing I'm going to have to do, and so that's my rationale. The other thing I'm going to do is set a rule, right? It's set a rule that I should. The problem is I've been raising it, right? So I have to decide on going 600 or going for 1,000. Right? I can't be this 600 or 1,000. And the reason I chose 600 is, honestly, I know a lot of times when I'm down more than 600, I don't recover. I don't recover to it ain't better. You know, recovery depends. You know, so the thing is, I know a lot of times I'm down 1,000. A lot of times, you know, it's around 600, recovery starts to become a smaller probability. So here's the deal. So another thing is, it's not changing. Okay, now this may not be true for everybody. If, say, you want to locate different amounts per time of day, but this is, once you get in there and start changing it, it's just too easy to go in there and change it again and change it and change it. So I want to set a rule that I'm not changing it. I'm not changing it intraday. Okay. Set of 600. Now I can raise it. Now, if I do well, I may raise it to 1,000 one day if I'm trading well, right? But the rule is I never change. So now the other thing was predicting rules, right? So we know these rules are not to restrict us. These rules are so that we know when we're acting disciplined. Therefore, our knowledge of discipline, right? Without rules, we don't know when we're being disciplined, right? We don't know. Like, you know, so I didn't know because I didn't have these rules. So first rule I'm making is I never change my loss limit during market hours, or when I have a trade. Let's say never change my loss limit during market out during the day. Okay, during the day. Okay. So this idea, okay, you're going to change it. You know, it may be good to put a 24-hour hold on it, right? If I change it, must wait 24 hours. Okay. So if I want to change it, you got to give it 24 hours. That's the first thing. Okay. Never change my loss limit during the day. 2, my loss limit is set to $600. Okay, strictly, and I won't change it, right? And I won't change it for any reason. Okay. Any reason. Well, the only exception to this would be system trades, right? They would fall under a different category if I not fully automated systems. And they would treat these differently. But you know, for my loss limit strictly, and I don't change it for, you know, any reason pertaining to my trading. Why just set it this way? Okay, this is my loss limit. The system have another loss limit, right? Because that would be one thing where, you know. So this is never change my loss limit during the day. You know, if I change it, it must wait 24 hours. If I determine to change it, must wait 24 hours, right, before going into effect. Okay, so now we have the structure. Okay, and this is not set in stone. I may make this 650. because it's right at 600 where I have where that borderline is where I can recover versus not recover. So but you have to decide on something, right? Maybe just leave it with 600, and the point is we have to decide on something and leave it there. You can't be wishy-washy. And I'm gonna set this in my rhythmic, which I guess I'll leave it at 600 because I always have it set 600 in my rhythmic. So this is it, okay? So now we have our rationale, okay? Rationale, okay? Now we have a rationale, and now we should be able to adhere to our loss limit because we understand the value of it. We understand, okay, if I make a mistake, I go over it. We understand that, hey, right, value. Okay, I shouldn't have a problem making money until I have evidence that I don't, right? No, and hitting the loss limit is evidence something's going wrong, right? I value adhering to my risk limit more than recovering on the day, okay? So I value following those rules more than maximizing my money, right? I value trading in a consistent way with discipline more than making as much as possible, okay? I value staying in the game more than making as much as possible, as I just said. I recognize that mistakes can happen and they can be costly, and that the loss limit protects me from those mistakes, and that the loss limit, my auto liquidation limit, is a safety net, right? I recognize I can trade within any reasonable loss limit, and it is my freedom to do so. Okay, it's my freedom to do so, right? It's not imposed upon me. If I hit my loss limit one day because I sized wrong, the next day I come in and size my trade smaller and take more trades, right? And here's the final rules, right? My rules, which it gives me the knowledge of whether I'm acting disciplined, right? Number one, I never change my loss limit during the day. If I determine to change it, I must wait 24 hours before going into effect. Two, my loss limit is set to $600 strictly. So this is how I'm going forward. Hope this helps. I'm trying to provide this for value. It is painful to lose. But what you're going to do, you have to get back in there and you're going to be a trader or not, right? And this is what I was expecting to happen. I got stopped at around I think 50 or something, but that's this is kind of what I expected to happen today. I didn't manage the risk properly, so instead of having a nice win today, I have a nice loss, an unnice loss, right? One thing I will say too, if you're a system trade, this is something I don't have a problem with anymore because I recognize the mistake. But when I traded systems, sometimes I'd load up on system trades, and then I would change the stop loss, and I'd be like, okay, because I know this trade has a high probability of winning. But once you change the stop loss, right, you're changing the odds of the system working. You're changing the probabilities of it working. So that's another thing to help if your problem is system trades. Understand that once you change the stop loss, you're changing the odds completely, right? You're completely changing the odds. So that's another thing. The odds are only, you see, you have this 70% chance of winning this trade. That's only given that you trade it the way it was designed. So I hope that will help too. So again, I hope this provides value. It's not the funnest thing, but I feel this is going to provide a lot of value. And doing this is maybe my most valuable blog video yet. Hope it helps. That's all for now.